Welcome to the Bros Talking Soccer podcast, a podcast where three brothers generally chat about what's happening in American and European soccer. But it is the 2019 World Cup. It is day 9, and that's what we're talking about today. My name is Dave Knittel, the eldest Knittel brother. Middle Knittel, Christian, has plans today, so he couldn't join. He may be on tomorrow, though. And then Little Knittel, Matthew, was not responding to text, so he won't be on. I don't know what his excuse is or where he is, and I don't think he'll be on tomorrow, though. So it's just going to be Dave riding solo. Matt Leffler, who's been with us for the past few days, is catching up on some sleep, and will be joining us again on Monday, but we thank him for joining us over the last few days. So it's just going to be me. We record this thing live on YouTube, so come hang out with me and interact with me as I go along here. Before we get into today's podcast, wanted to give a couple plugs. We are a part of the Big Heads Media Network. BigHeadsMedia.com has tons of awesome podcasts for you. I'm going through and listening to all the different podcasts right now. Today, I listened to one called Brew Crime, where they drink beers, review them, and then chat about criminals. And so it's very different than this podcast, but it's really interesting. And so if you're into that, if you're into sports, they have tons of sports podcasts. They have movie ones, Docs That Rock reviews documentaries. And so tons of awesome podcasts over on bigheadsmedia.com. Go check them out. We are also a part of StadiumScene.tv. StadiumScene.tv is a network that has awesome sports content for you. They have podcasts, but they also have blogs. They have YouTube videos. They have tons of soccer content. They have the Lads podcast, which are two guys that drink beers and are a lot of fun and talk mainly about what's happening in European soccer. We've had them on a bunch of times. We've been on their podcast. So again, awesome content over on StadiumScene.tv. Before we get to today's recap, I should say, I wanted to circle back on Jeff's question from yesterday. I know Matt and I were really struggling with revenge games. I thought immediately after we stopped recording, when Emmanuel Adebayor played against Arsenal back in 2009 for Manchester City, he scored a goal on the opposite end of the pitch, ran the full length of the pitch to celebrate in front of the Arsenal fans who allegedly were racially abusing him. So that was a revenge game for him, and that was one that I thought of. Jeff also had another question, and he sent it via text, via Twitter message. So I was able to prepare at least to a certain extent. I could think of 2, but I couldn't think of 3. And so his hypothetical question was if he's, I guess, has access to all of the content in all of the museums around the world, what are the 3 things that I would most like to have in my possession that I could display in my house? And so it was a fantastic question, and I like it. Gets you thinking. So I could think of 2 definites, and then the third one I struggled with, but I think I came up with one. So one, definitely won a World Cup trophy. I'm sure there's one in a museum somewhere. I didn't verify this, but I'm sure there's one in a FIFA museum or something like that. World Cup trophy, that would be really cool. Number 2, Declaration of Independence. I am from the city of Philadelphia. I'm American. That piece of paper has tons of implications, kind of around the world. And so that would be amazing to have. And then the third one, again, I'm from the city of Philadelphia. I love old maps, and so if this happens to be in a museum, I'm going to claim it, but a map of the original plans of the city of Philadelphia. So my wife and I, we've lived at a couple different cities, and so we've bought replica maps and things like that of hand-drawn original plans for those cities. And so having one from Philadelphia that wasn't original, I think would be really cool. So Jeff, awesome questions. I love it. It's a little bit off topic from what we're talking about here, but it's good to to get us thinking and talking about different things. Okay, let's get to what you actually came here for. 2019, day 9 of the World Cup, and we had Netherlands taking on Cameroon in the early match, and then later on we had Canada facing off against New Zealand. Both matches were pretty comfortable victories for the 2 teams that won, but still going to get into it. Netherlands took on Cameroon. Netherlands came out in a 4-3-3, and Cameroon was in a 5-4-1. First thing that I noted came about in the 3rd minute. There was an early ball by the Netherlands down the line for Van de Senden, for her to run into space. So the ball came early, and she could actually get out with a head of steam and run onto it. It was good to get her involved early because she was not involved at all in their first match against New Zealand, and they clearly made it a point to involve her. Nguyen was listed as the left midfielder, and early on in the match, from about the 3rd to the 8th minute, she just went up and played right striker, and this didn't really looked like a tactical decision that was instructed by the Cameroon squad, because there was nobody filling in kind of in her role where you would have expected. And Netherlands didn't really take advantage of that. And ultimately, Nguene came back to left mid, but that was a really sort of weird 5 minutes where there was just a ton of space on the right flank for Netherlands to attack. So the defensive left flank for Cameroon. And again, eventually she went back to position, but it wasn't like someone else was covering for her. It didn't look like there was a rotation. And Ganamut may have been the one that was supposed to be tracking back, but she was not doing that whatsoever. And so that was just a weird sort of interesting tactical thing that happened for about 5 minutes, and then it went away. Netherlands, like I said, was clearly trying to involve Van de Senden, and it was good that they were trying to get her the ball with at least 40 plus yards of space in front of her. I think that she was much more effective at that than getting the ball with, a sunk defense that only had, she only had 25 yards of space to work in, and she was getting double teamed. That didn't happen quite as much today. I thought Cameroon's counter press was being deployed at the right times. They weren't just pressing immediately when they lost the ball. They were pressing with specific cues and when the ball was close and able to be won. So it was pretty coordinated from that perspective, and I wanted to give them props there. Early on, the Cameroon goalkeeper and defense had a number of moments where they didn't look to be on the same page. I didn't know if communication wasn't happening or what, but there was either a lack of confidence or something else happening, but they had a couple of nervy moments early, and Netherlands didn't make them pay. 19th minute, there was a big delay, and the ref ended up talking to Nguene. I don't know if this was the broadcast didn't address this whatsoever, so I'm not sure exactly what happened. I didn't see any replays, but it was worthy of note. Also, it was worthy of note, Nguene had a number of battles against Chapman, and she is someone who likes to mix it up. Chapman is the outside back for Canada in the first match, and so Nguene clearly likes to mix it up, get involved in things, and so keep an eye out for her moving forward in the tournament. 22nd minute, Cameroon has a long diagonal to Nguene, and the Netherlands left back intercepts it, but she ends up slipping, and Nguene shoots the ball wide. So the left back for Netherlands was Van Lutheren, and at this point, multiple Netherlands players had been slipping. Van de Senden had slipped many times, and by the 24th minute, she changed her boots. But a number of Netherlands players were slipping all over the pitch, and it's always interesting when it's not just one player who's slipping and got her boot wear incorrect. It was multiple players. So I thought the pitch was... You know what? Actually, now I'm putting this together, because in the second half, no, that was still in the first half. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was really hot there. What I was getting at is that maybe the field was slick early, but then it really, really slowed down. And there were a number of instances in the game where the ball didn't move the way that the players expected. And Cameroon gets their goal kind of from that. There were a number of under hit passes, even dribbling the ball got stuck under people's feet. Under people's feet. Yeah, I think that's the right way to say it. And so the pitch looked slow, which doesn't make sense for players slipping all over the place. So again, that was just kind of a weird thing. I thought I made a connection, but I did not. I thought Cameroon throughout the game was way too individualistic offensively. So specifically through 30 minutes, but really throughout the game, there was way too much trying to take players one-on-one and or hitting shots from just ridiculous angles and ridiculous distances. And even when they weren't doing that, because they were trying to do stuff so much individually, the supporting players kind of gave up on their runs, and it just became very static for Cameroon in the attacking third. Even when they tried to get things going, there was either only one or two players in the box or they weren't moving. And throughout the game, I thought Cameroon needed to be a little bit more connected from an attacking perspective, because it kind of worked against them. Matt is joining us as a viewer today. Hello, Matt. Thank you for being here. Let us know your thoughts on the game. I'll relay them there. Netherlands, from an attacking perspective, were clearly pinching their wingers inside in possession to allow their fullbacks to provide the width. And so that was something that was happening throughout. They weren't really creating much of anything. All of the half chances that came early in the match for the Netherlands really came about from Cameroon's own doing, from their mistakes and miscommunications. 37th minute, this is kind of a controversial call. The Cameroonian player Ingo Mabelek clears the ball, and she follows through at head height of Groningen, who was closing her from the Netherlands. That's not a normal play. When you go to kick the ball, you don't follow through to that extent, even when you're running at full speed. And so clearly there was some intent to do some damage. And so ultimately, Ngo Mabelek only makes minimal contact with Gronin, thankfully, and she gets a yellow. But I thought that this could have potentially been a red. Ultimately, I'm okay with this being a yellow because she didn't make a ton of contact. But there was some serious malintent, I think is the right word to use there. And so that's something that the referee, I thought Cameroon was pretty physical throughout the game, but that was one that was pretty egregious. And luckily, there wasn't more contact made, because if there was, that should have been a straight red. 41st minute, Netherlands gets their goal, and they had been sloppy up until that point, but Spitze has a superb ball that's sprayed wide to Van de Senden, who takes a really good settle, plays a quick 1-2 with Gronin, and then as soon as she gets the ball back, Van de Senden that is, she hits a first-time ball. Earlier in the game, I noted a couple instances where there was a similar play, and Van de Senden tried to take a touch or two, and it allowed the Cameroonian defender to get back and intercept the ball, or at least block it out. This time she takes it early, she takes it first time, and Miedema gets in front of her runner, perfect cross, heads it far post, excellent finish, and a great goal by the Netherlands here. As I'm taking these notes, though, Cameroon, yes. So Matt, just circling back on the red card, the 37th minute possible red card, he thinks that it was a red card. And I could ultimately be talked into that, because it doesn't always have to be actual content that injures someone. It can be intent. And clearly her intent was not the great. Clearly there was intent there to do damage. And for that reason, I would have been okay if the ref would have dished out a red card. Circling back to the 43rd minute, Netherlands, again, I was still taking, writing down what happened for the Netherlands goal. I look up and Cameroon has the ball in the back of the net. So this comes after a goalkeeper punt by Cameroon. And so the goalkeeper has the ball. She punts it out to midfield, and Cameroon wins it, settles it back to Fudijo. I know that wasn't how they pronounce it. Fudijo. That's what I'm going with. Fuck it. Fudijo. And Fudijo, I thought throughout had played a number of great balls over the top. And in this instance, I thought the Netherlands didn't pressure her whatsoever. But the ball is played over the top, and it drops in, and the bounce clearly is not what the Netherlands goalkeeper expected, because it really didn't behave like you would expect the ball to, especially on these pitches nowadays that tend to be watered, tend to be slick. The ball really sort of bounces and holds up. And that doesn't really happen on, the pitches that they play on, especially at the World Cup level. And so I can somewhat understand why Van Veenendaal, the goalkeeper for Netherlands, doesn't play this correctly. Now, having said that, she gets it way wrong, because even after the ball bounces, she then tries to come out and doesn't make herself big and is nowhere near getting the ball. And Nguene gets her head to it, easily flicks it over Van Veenendaal, and then finishes into the open net. But again, I touched on it earlier, the ball really was bouncing oddly throughout the game, and the pitch seemed to be slow here. Getting to the second half, 48th minute, Netherlands gets their goal, and it comes from a set piece, and I really fault Cameroon on this one. It was just terrible defense. So Netherlands has two players over the ball, and Gronin runs over the ball and down towards the right flank. So the free kick is about 25 yards out on the right side of the pitch from a Netherlands attacking perspective, about kind of where the corner of the 18 is, but it's about 25 yards out. So Gronin runs over the ball kind of as a, distraction technique, and just continues her run down the flank. And the Cameroonian wall, which has two players in it, don't follow her whatsoever. So Netherlands, rightfully so, plays a very easy through ball to her. She takes a touch, is in acres of space, plays in a very dangerous cross. Bloodworth completely misses the ball. We saw her miss in the New Zealand game. She misses on the first one, and then the Cameroonian defender gets her feet all wrong. The ball bounces right back to Bloodworth inside the 6-yard box with a wide open net, and she is able to finish there. And Netherlands takes the 2-1 lead. I do want to say this was a pretty soft foul call by Fudijo on Van de Donk, who is known to kind of go to ground a little bit easier. Fudijo may have, had a little bit of hands, but I thought it was a fairly soft call here. And so Cameroon can feel a bit aggrieved with the initial foul call, but the defense on that was absolutely terrible. Martins, I don't think was really involved throughout the game, specifically through 55 minutes, but throughout she was not nearly as involved in the first match. Fadijo, again, I thought she was really good for Cameroon. Positionally, she was tasked with a lot of defensive work and was intercepting a lot of balls, and then was really dangerous on hitting long balls and even just like medium balls where, she was fantastic at spraying the ball long into space and Cameroon players getting on the end of it. But even those kind of like half spaces where she had to chip it over maybe one defender over like a 15-20 yard period, she was really good at doing that with both feet. I was really impressed with her game throughout. We had a couple subs at that point. Van de Senden comes off in the 66th. I thought that she kind of, her game faded as the game wore on. She was very impactful in the first half, not so much in the second half. Cameroon just disconnected throughout, specifically between their attackers and midfielders. And again, I think it all stems from the fact that they were trying to do way too much individually. So yeah, Matt, had to do way too much individually. 81st minute, Ongwene has a great bit of individual play. She drives to the end line and cuts it back to Akaba, who was wide open from about 8 yards out and has her shot blocked. At this point, Ongwene had moved to center forward. 85th minute is when Netherlands gets the goal to seal it. And so this comes about after Netherlands has a dropped ball to goalkeeper. Oh, so Netherlands passes the ball back to the goalkeeper. She then hits a long ball to Van Lunteren, the left back, and Van Lunteren settles it, plays it inside to Berenstein, and this was incredible play by Berenstein here. I was really impressed with her on this play because she's in a pocket of space, and then the Cameroonian defenders are closing in on her, and Miedema is open down the left flank, but the window is really tight for her to squeeze a pass in there. And what she does is she doesn't try to squeeze it in there. She has a couple little touches and a quick move to pull the ball back and sort of open up a window for her, a bigger window for her to play the ball into Miedema. And that is really how Miedema collects the ball with, acres of space. But it all comes about from really good kind of hold-up play. Not even the traditional hold-up play where you think of, back to goal. This is more possession hold-up play where you're just drawing the defenders in and creating an angle for yourself. And she doesn't move more than maybe 2 yards in total in the whole movement. But even just those subtle movements and subtle touches open up the window for her. So I wanted to give her props there. Plays it out to Miedema. She takes a few touches, drives into the box, and then hits it kind of perfectly. Who were they saying? I think Bobby Warshaw was talking about this on a recent podcast or a recent game that I was watching, where Wayne Rooney had this technique where he would drive at defenders and hit these shots where as soon as the defender kind of opened their legs, he would use their legs to shoot the ball through, because he was really good at kind of hitting and timing it right. And that is exactly what Miedema does here. She drives right at Johnson, who backs off admittedly too far. She should have engaged her a little bit higher up, but she's about 16 yards out, hits it through Johnson's legs. It goes into the net, and that is Miedema's record-breaking goal. She is 22 years old. She had 2 goals in this match, scored a brace, got her 59th to tie the all-time Netherlands record of goals scored, and then she gets this one to break the record. At 22 years old, she has scored 60 goals for her country, all-time record goal scorer. So congrats to her. Netherlands, then, they didn't, last thing I noted here, they didn't really create a ton throughout the game, but they took their half chances well when they had opportunities. They finished them and ultimately deserved a win here, 3-1 at the end of it. Breathe. That is the end of the first match. Second match, we had Canada taking on New Zealand, and Canada prevailed in dominating fashion, 2-0 over New Zealand. So they both came out in 4-4-2s. New Zealand's evolved a little bit more, and actually so did Canada. Actually didn't play a 4-4-2. It took me a little while to figure out what they were doing, but they really played a 3-1-4-2, and New Zealand was in more or less a 4-5-1, 4-4-2 formation. I thought throughout the match, the commentators who aren't even there, they're calling it off a monitor, which really just sort of bugs me. That's an aside. But the commentators were trying to drum up the atmosphere in the stadium. I thought it was absolutely dead. And you could hear a pin drop on multiple occasions. It was, for all intents and purposes, I think the stadium held 15,000. There was 14,800. And there were only moments where the crowd really got into it, which was really sort of interesting. And I don't know if that impacted, the game as it went along. It was just overall kind of a dead atmosphere. Canada had most of the possession early and were working both sides of the pitch. That kind of was a theme throughout. Schmidt, who I thought initially I noted was playing much further back than Scott last match. So in the last match, Scott acted more as a cover when the outside fullbacks of Canada were overlapping, and Scott was the one to kind of fill in. In this match, I thought Schmidt was back there, but at the end of the day, actually, Schmidt was playing right back or right center back because Canada, again, was in a 3-4-1-2. They had Lawrence listed as their left back. Lawrence was not their left back. She was playing kind of a floating center midfield, attacking center mid. She was all over the pitch. And Schmidt was filling in at right back. The right back who they had listed as Riviere was actually more of a right midfield or right wing formation. And so, again, the formation that they listed was not the formation that they played. Again, the players are out there, but they were kind of all over the pitch. 15th minute. I mean, we got to talk about this. It's so unfortunate, but it really looks like Butt, the right back for New Zealand, breaks her arm, probably her wrist. It's just kind of a freak play. The ball is crossed in and it just hits her really the wrong way. And when they showed the replay, her arm just bends the way that it's not supposed to, but she walks it off like an absolute champion. No tears. You could see on her face just a disappointment. I hope that there's a chance that she might be able to play, with arm injuries. Maybe you can cast it. Maybe you can wrap it up. But, it'd just be really unfortunate for her World Cup to end that way. But the commentators were kind of not the greatest at even acknowledging they thought she might be able to come back. I mean, the medical staff got out there and were immediately signaling for a sub. And so that's when the injury is really bad. Then, so this delay happened this happened in the 15th minute. By the time Canada hits the corner, it's the 18th minute. So there was quite a long delay. What was really interesting is that New Zealand was all set up to have their sub, but the referee allowed Canada to play the corner. It almost looked like New Zealand wasn't ready for it. And this is Canada's best chance of the first half. There's a mad scramble. They hit the crossbar. Sinclair hits the crossbar on her initial header. Then there are two more headers. I think Buchanan's in there. She's a header cleared off the line, and then ultimately gets cleared off the line far away by New Zealand. But for me, I couldn't understand why the corner happened before Longo came on for New Zealand. So again, that was very odd and a really weird decision by the referees there. Longo, when she came on, they moved her to midfield, and Percival ended up dropping back to right back. Just some personnel shifts for New Zealand, but they really didn't have much going at all. Sinclair, was dropping all over the pitch, but specifically dropping really deep to just try to get involved in the game in the first half. And I noted some of the formational issues, which I already touched on. Not issues, but just formational things that I noted. New Zealand had their first real attack in the 38th minute. So this was a cross. The keeper punched it away, and then Chance had an opportunity, let's call it that, and she absolutely shanks her shot. I want to say this is the shot that was counted as New Zealand's shot of the half, and it doesn't go anywhere close to goal. It would have gone out for a throw-in, but it didn't even make it that far. And so that was New Zealand's only opportunity, and that was how they took it, which is indicative kind of how the game went. New Zealand, for how organized they are defensively, and they have a very defined shape, and they have a very defined width to their formation, and Canada was doing a good job of keeping players spread out, but I thought that Schmidt was the only player on Canada willing to hit a long direct diagonal out to either, flank. I mean, because she was on the right side, most of them came out to the left to Becky, but I didn't think that Canada, was doing that enough or had enough players to do it. But getting back to New Zealand, for how organized they were, I thought that they were really sloppy with their defensive line, and specifically their last line, where some players were dropping when others weren't. And Canada had numerous opportunities that weren't converted, but they were keeping players on side because they weren't coordinated, which again was really surprising to see from a team that was so drilled. So that's something to keep an eye on as they head into their last match. I thought when Canada had those laybacks, so when the ball is kind of towards the end line and maybe in one of the corners and it's dropped back from maybe a winger to an outside back, I thought that Canada, when they took a touch and then served it in, they would just kill momentum, but they were having some success when they were just hitting that first time. And so I thought that they needed to do more of that. First half ends, Canada 73% possession, New Zealand's 27. Canada had 13 shots, New Zealand's 1 shot, which again was, I think that shot by Chance, that was nowhere near goal. And then most telling, Canada's pass success rate was 84%. New Zealand's was 47% pass success. So of the passes that they hit, less than half were connecting in the first half. Just goes to show just the dominance of Canada, but it goes into half 0-0. Gregorius, the center forward that was impressed with in New Zealand's opening round performance, was not involved whatsoever in the first half or even, her 15 minutes in the second half. I thought Canada needed, okay, this is where I noted the long diagonals. Canada goal comes about in the 48th minute, and it's a very odd goal because it comes about after an absolutely terrible Canada throw-in. So they have the throw-in in their own half. Becky throws it basically right to New Zealand, and the New Zealand player panics and just tries to kick it first time and just get rid of it as quickly as possible. So she ends up giving it right back to Canada. Canada does well then to have a couple of quick combinations. I know Scott is in there. Desiree Scott is in there. She combines with one player and then works it out wide back to Becky, who had thrown it in, but she's standing by the touchline. Becky hits a quick ball over the top to Prince, I want to say. Yes, Prince, who's breaking down the left flank. It's a fantastic ball. Prince drives end line and then has that cutback to Fleming, the center midfielder who had been trailing the play. She got into a good pocket of space, wide open, finishes first time, and a really good goal, but it all came about after just an absolutely atrocious throw-in for Canada in their own defensive kind of third, at least defensive half. 62nd minute, Gregorius comes off, and when this happens, New Zealand switches to a 3-5-2. Even though they had this formation shift, it didn't really do much for them. It was worthy of note, but didn't really help too much. Lawrence, clearly for someone who was the attacking center midfielder who was, free to roam in the first half, she was clearly instructed to be on the left side until there were some substitutions that came around the 70th minute when she went over to the right side of the pitch, and that's where she finished out. 72nd minute, this is when Canada gets their second goal. So Sinclair sent, this is the save of the day, excuse me. Canada's goal comes a little bit later. So 72nd minute, Sinclair has the ball kind of where Canada had, has the ball on the left side of the pitch, probably about 22 yards out from goal near the corner of the 18. She sends in a straight cross. It doesn't have a ton of height, but it doesn't have any bend into Prince, and Prince gets a really nice header onto it. It's headed into the far post, and Naylor, the keeper for New Zealand, gets a hand to it, tips it over the bar, out of play. Really good play all around there. Sub in the 75th for Canada, and then 79th minute, this is where Canada gets their goal. And so this comes about because there's a ball out to the right by Fleming. Lawrence then has a nice touch and floats it into the back post, really dangerous area. And again, it's not hit with a ton of pace, but it's not lofted like way up high. It's a good kind of floating. And Sinclair gets her head to it, just beats her defender. It comes off of the post, and Prince taps it in. Canada's up 2-0, deservedly so. Closes out the game from then on out. I can close it out. I think I pulled up the stats at the very end of the match, but it was just a dominating performance by Canada overall. And I'm talking slowly so I can pull up the stats. Okay, here it goes. Finishes with 69% possession to New Zealand's 31, 24 shots for Canada to New Zealand's 2. I don't even remember a shot in the second half, so none of New Zealand's shots ended up being on target. New Zealand got over the 50% pass success rate and got up to 55%, but just a dominating performance by Canada. They're on 6 points. They're through to the next round, and an excellent performance by them. Let's get to our of the days. We have our save of the day, and that is the 72nd minute, which I was just talking about previously. That's the ball in by Sinclair. Prince gets a header to it, and Naylor has an excellent diving save, tipping it over the crossbar out of play at full extension. So that is my save of the day. My goal of the day was the first goal by the Netherlands, and I absolutely love this because of the combination play and just how ruthless the Netherlands was on this play. Spitze has it in the middle of the park. She sprays it out wide. Nice settle by Van de Senden. She combines really quickly with Groningen, serves in a fantastic first-time cross into Miedema, who heads it into the open net. Just excellent play all around by the Netherlands on that. That is why it is my goal of the day. And my moment of the day is Netherlands' third goal, and that is Miedema getting her record goal for all-time record goal scorer of the Netherlands, and that came about in the 85th minute for the Netherlands. And this is the one where she Berenstein creates the opportunity for her. She drives inside and ends up shooting through Johnson's legs. And so those are my 3 of the days. Let's talk about tomorrow's matches now. We have Sweden and Thailand as the first match, and then we have USA versus Chile. Sweden versus Thailand is at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then USA-Chile is at noon. Sweden versus Thailand, I'm expecting a comprehensive Sweden victory. I don't think it'll be double-digit goals the way that it was against the U.S. I expect Sweden to maybe get 4 or 5. I expect Thailand to be a little bit more organized defensively, maybe put up a little bit more of a fight, but ultimately they're outmatched technically, physically, tactically in this World Cup, and it's going to be about damage limitation for them. And I would expect Sweden, who is a relatively strong side, even though they struggled a little bit against Chile, to not really struggle too much against Thailand. U.S. versus Chile. Conversely, the U.S. is going to come out all guns blazing the same way they did against Thailand. Chile is a much stronger opponent, and I would expect a multi-goal victory for the USA. But again, nowhere close to approaching double-digit goals. Chile will fight. They'll be a little bit more organized than Thailand. They're a little bit bigger than Thailand, a little bit more tactically astute. And the U.S., though, I mean, they've come out and they've been preaching it, all the pre-camps, all the press conferences, they've been saying they're coming out and they're trying to score as many goals as possible. So they're going to come out and try to score. They might give up a goal or two here or there as they open themselves, but I expect them to score many goals tomorrow and get a multi-goal victory. My player to look out for in tomorrow's matches, Rose Lavelle. I have been so impressed with her for the U.S. in the middle of the park. I love so much about her game. I like her control. I like the way that she moves about the pitch. She's got moves. She's got a thunder strike. And so left-footed, absolutely love Rose Lavelle's game so far. So I'm going to be watching out for her tomorrow. That is it. That is the podcast for today. Reminder, we record live on YouTube as soon as the matches finish. So tomorrow we'll be recording a little bit earlier. Usually we record at 2 p.m. West Coast time. So it's at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So tomorrow will be a little bit earlier. It'll be closer to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So join me. Hopefully Christian will be here. But yeah, you can record live with us, or you can be here while we record live, interact with me on YouTube, any comments, questions, or anything like that. If you want to get in contact with us, our Twitter's at BTSoccerPod. Our email is bros.talking.soccer@gmail.com. Make sure to follow us on Twitter as well. Check out our website, brostalkingsoccer.com. You can read about myself, my brothers, check out our past episodes, check out, the networks that we are a part of, and go to our store, support us and all of that. We have a Slack channel if you want to join that and chat with other soccer fans. Again, hit us up on Twitter or send an email. And with that brings us to the end of another podcast. I thank you so much for listening. I'm having a lot of fun watching all of these matches, and I'm hoping you're enjoying these recaps. I love to hear feedback, so let me know if you're enjoying these, anything you want me to focus on, and all of that. Would love to hear from you. Thank you so much. I hope you're having a fantastic weekend, and I will talk to you tomorrow. See you, everyone.